So we need to determine how far that delta is between today and retirement. When we retire, what is it that we want to do in life? Is it the fact that we want to continue everything that we're doing today? How is our life going to change? What do we want to accomplish in life? And how many of those things down the road are, well, one day I'm going to jump out of an airplane, one day I'm going to go on a cruise, while we're making these decisions and building our discipline to enjoy the essence of what that is that we want to do in retirement. So we start doing some of that now. Time is the thing that is the only finite resource that we have. We can always make more money, but what if we look at time as that lottery win? We have all of the time right now to do what we want.
Whether you're looking for inspiration, guidance, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. This is Wisdom Stripes. Hello and welcome to Wisdom Stripes. My name is Meg Tuohey, and in today's episode, we will explore the world of financial freedom, real estate, and the strategies that help us build wealth with intention. Our guest today is Trystan Trenberth, not only a visionary investor, entrepreneur, and financial strategist based in Arizona, but also the architect behind Midlife to Millions, a platform empowering individuals to take control of their financial future. With a track record of over 18 successful fix and flip projects, a deep knowledge of tax strategy, and expertise in infinite banking, Trystan helps others create abundance and financial independence. But beyond the numbers and the strategies, there's always a deeper story, a journey of reinvention, resilience, and hard-earned wisdom. To share his insights on wealth building, the power of connection, and how intentional decisions can change your financial destiny, I'm excited to welcome Trystan to today's episode. This is Wisdom Stripes, your no-nonsense, fierce fairy godparents, turning pain and confusion into clarity and confidence. Trystan, we always start with the same question for our guests, and that is, what wisdom would you like a listener to come away with today?
What I'd like people to come away with is the power of connection, the power of relationships, and the power to collaborate. I see us as one thing, expressing ourselves with infinite variety, and the fact that we can be so connected, we can be disjointed and disconnected in so many ways, but the power is the relationships. And fulfilling the void of knowledge that you have with energy and value to somebody in a specific and intentional way that allows that to be reciprocated. Now, it may not be a one-on-one, transactional thing, and transactions have their place, but and sometimes you do pay somebody to consult them to solve a problem for you. But in so many cases that we can have those transformational relationships where we put something out there, somebody can help us, and it's almost the universal law of reciprocity working with us, and it's not directly helping one individual person that they provide that one solution to you, but it's being connected with as many people, and not to an infinite volume of people, but to those that you're aligned with, those that you vibrate well with, and then just be in harmony with those people and allow other people to contribute to you and allow yourself to contribute to them.
So there's a few words that you've said, Trystan, that really resonate with me. There's this idea of collaboration, this idea of giving and receiving, this idea of vibration and those that are meant for you, maybe to be in community with and perhaps to serve as part of that giving and receiving paradigm. Can you talk to us about those words and why they're important to you? How do they fit together?
They fit together not necessarily in a jigsaw type way that you see a picture exactly, but it's allowing pieces to fall into place that may not seem obviously in place. I did a puzzle about 3 weeks ago, and I saw it initially, like most puzzles, are two-dimensional. You got one photograph on one side, and that's what you have to put together. This was a puzzle of pieces of wood that had been intermeshed with each other, but there were different squares with different alignments of the wood. So one panel went that way, one went vertically, the other went here. What I didn't realize was the inverse, the pieces had two ways that they could be joined together, and they weren't always the obvious ones. But once once I clicked and saw it, it was very much easier to work with the situation. And coming back to your question is, sometimes it takes a step back to feel the alignment and see the alignment, but it's always from here that we often are too busy being attached to an outcome that we see should happen instead of feeling what we see along the way that guides us to where the outcome is. And very often that's a better outcome than we could have imagined. Sometimes there's a lesson and it doesn't work, but if we look at life as an experiment instead of a true or false statement that this is going to happen the way I want it to happen, if I'm offered a solution and I'm blinkered to that's the only one that I'm willing to accept, unless I take the blinkers off, and there might be a much better solution in my periphery that I'm not seeing because I'm not open to it. And when we don't see those alignments and feel those as energetic vibrations, that's where we limit ourselves and blinker ourselves.
It just seems like you're describing the human experience where we can get a bit stuck in what it is to be human, which is, a bit blinkered and a bit one directional. And when we are more in our heart coherence, when we're in more of alignment with ourselves, it's easier to see more perspectives or the bigger picture. The thing that strikes me the most about that puzzle analogy, though, is that the piece didn't fit that way, but if you flipped it, it did. And that perspective taking, that ability to rotate the actual solution so that it fits using perspective taking, that feels like true wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was Google or somebody has their teams work on personal projects for a fair chunk of their time, like 15, 20% of their schedule is working on passion projects with other people in the business. So it takes their creativity beyond the role that they were hired for. And there's possibility they may find other skills and gifts that they didn't realize they had by working with other people. And it may not be the task they're working on, but it might ignite or create the awareness of something else that they didn't yet know that they could do. And with these pieces, if somebody isn't right for a role in a company, there's the analogy with the music industry. Most people started as a tea boy, making tea. They found their way around. And I think there was a very well-known guy, I think Simon Cowell was almost doing that with Stock Aitken and Waterman. He knew what he wanted to do, but he was willing to get in at the very base end just to do the basic things so he could get in the door, learn the people, learn the skills, and learn the business to what was going on. And then from him just being authentically him, they found that kind of the progression and what he was able to do very, very much since.
And so he had the piece and he rotated it until it fit into the puzzle of the dream that he had.
Yeah, he was the piece, but he was looking into the rest of the puzzle of the music industry to see where he might be able to fit himself based on learning much more about how the business worked and what the picture could look like with him in it.
So your deep dive special interest area, one of them, is around money and financials. And I couldn't help but notice the midlife piece. Now, that sparkled at me because I am midlife and so are many of my listeners. Tell us about midlife and money and why that's so important.
Yeah. I think we're both immigrants to this country, and, having some of my career in the UK and the assumption that we'll figure out retirement later on. Got to my midlife, I got married, moved to the United States, moved back to the UK, got divorced, moved back to the United States, and suddenly I'm in my late 30s thinking, I haven't really got things tied up yet. And even coming back as, solo with 2 kids, joining companies, I then realized that all of the companies are offering the same very basic tools. None of them seemed to be successful in the way that I had conversations with people. And I didn't really have those conversations until about 5 years ago, till I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That had sat on the shelf for about a year before I actually picked it up and read it. And once I read that, I really realized that, although I've got some pension in a couple of different places, or 401ks as they call them, another one in the UK, I didn't really have any idea how they worked or why I didn't know more about it. But I kind of put the pieces together with conversations with others is that the companies get the benefits for the tax for offering the 401k, especially if they're doing the match. You get the perceived benefit of not paying tax on the money you put in, but then you pay money on the tax that you draw out. That's where the government wins, and that's why this is a great thing for the government, but not so much for us. Of course, we've got a management company that look after these things for us, and they make fees and charges all year, so we never get true compounding, and we're buying into mutual funds generally, and there's no guarantee in the stock market, and that's why so many of these things are so volatile and so unsuccessful for people to retire. And if we now look in our midlife, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. At least we can make a mediocre change at worst, or make a major change and potentially retire early if we play our cards right.
You know, Robert was here from Rich Dad, Poor Dad just 2 people ago. And so we talked at length about the impact of his book and his work.
Yeah.
And he said the exact same thing as you did about the differences between that type of system and the system is broken. It doesn't work anymore. You can't follow that system to be able to thrive anymore.
Yeah.
And so your offering or your work at this point is about the ability to intercept using that knowledge and to be able to help midlife people make different financial decisions that allow them to have the experience of compounding interest. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I spoke to Robert about this a few weeks ago at the
You
gym.
did. Yeah. Isn't he beautiful?
Yeah. Yeah, incredible soul. In fact, I began writing a book 3 weeks ago before I left on my trip to the UK called Midlife to Millions. And we're going to build it in a way that's similar to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a parable on the story of somebody that's in their midlife, kind of reviews some of their past and how they weren't educated in the past. There's no financial literacy taught at schools.
Yep.
And just to sort of lead into where we are now and how we can first grow our awareness of what the situation is. It may be that we have nothing. It may be we have less than we thought, or it might be that we're aware of where we are. And at least that's the place that we can start from a clear foundation for the future. Whatever that foundation is, we can take heed, make note of it, and then we can have a fresh start.
All right. So we're midlife, we're listening to you. We're suddenly thinking, is he talking to me? Is it my 401k? Is it my pension? In Australia, we call it superannuation. Is it my superannuation that he's talking about I'm actually not making as much as I thought I was, and I'm giving a lot of it away to governing bodies? Hang on a second, am I actually going to be okay in 20 or 30 years? Will I have enough to live on? And is the answer at the moment, yes, I will, based on traditional investment structures into 401k and pensions and the like?
Very much the inverse, very much the opposite.
So it's not enough?
No.
How far off the mark are the traditional strategies?
I've heard some statistics that show as little as 300,000 is in people's 401k to retire with. And if you look at a $50,000 a year salary, if somebody finishes and there's no inflation, that's 6 years of retirement before they need to start work again, at best. Now, if we look at inflation, if 300,000, maybe let's call it 350, maybe 400 if we're generous by the time we get to whatever that age of retirement might be, their wages will have gone up by that time. The cost of living is going to have gone up. So it might even be less than that 6 years that they have. And I know Walmart only have a few greeter jobs, and that's not to demean the value of the people doing that work. But those are the sort of jobs that are there for people at that time. They don't really have a great choice, and they're not really well taken care of in that position. So they could just be working to the grave. And that's not even considering Medicaid, Medicare for assisted living. And I've done a lot of that in the last couple of years, working with people in those areas too, understanding a lot more about how that works. And they want you to sell any assets of certain classes before they'll start contributing. So it's a horrific future for a lot of people.
My understanding from the Australian perspective is that the most vulnerable population in Australia and in the aging population are single women, and how they quite often started work where they didn't make superannuation contributions or 401k contributions. They started working life later because it was uncommon to work in the 80s and 90s. It only became something you did late 90s, 2000, etc. So they haven't got a lot of money. And if they're single, perhaps they haven't got the assets that they once had or the protection of a partner. And there is a statistic that I am not going to attempt to get right, but the general rule is lots of these people are at risk for homelessness and having to live in their car or having to live kind of on the breadline to survive. Is these kind of normal women. And I feel like that is a travesty.
It is.
And it is probably not just even that group that is vulnerable. I think the group that is vulnerable is much bigger, because to make $300,000 last, I guess you have to live off the money that money makes. And what I think I heard you say is often the money that money makes goes to the investment funds that invest the money. So then your original capital, say it's 300,000, is the thing that decreases.
As it increases, you're losing a higher amount of money through the similar percentages they're charging you, which reduces the compounding or removes the compounding effect. So you might make 3 or 4% in the year where the fund actually made 7 or 8%, but you're losing those fees and the growth that you would have got because they're trimming off those fees and charges for buying and selling shares within the mutual fund or creating mutual funds where you buy and sell those, the ownership of those fractional assets and, just general management fees. But yes, ideally that 300 would be what the money makes, but in the way that the 401k works, you need to draw money from it rather than live off the proceeds from.
So that just doesn't sound sustainable.
No.
So how are people actually doing this?
You've got the boomers that really planned well and came out of it very well. And there's a lot of people that weren't in that position, weren't in jobs that could create that sustaining income through retirement. So many people relate retirement to an age, not an income stream, which is passive and exceeds the cost of living. We haven't got that educational foundation right. It's like, it's like being a professional retiree. Unless your retirement is paying for you to retire, you're not really retired. And you're just spending down your capital to a point at which you're going to run out and be in the same position those women are. Maybe disabled people that also weren't able to work as early, get the same level of benefits that other people did because the jobs couldn't necessarily employ them to the full spectrum of where an able-bodied man, woman, or otherwise might have been able to be employed, and that section of the community is much larger than we really think about.
I think we've identified the at-risk populations. I feel like, though, it is important to acknowledge that it is bigger than the at-risk populations. This is affecting the average American,
this is the
British
person,
Australian,
internationally
so blue collar, maybe lower work, white collar, where you think that your investments are going to be what it needs, and there's a gap. So is that factually accurate?
Absolutely. I mean, without, it's not my intention at all in this statement to say that these wealth management companies are doing a bad job. Their structure is to make money for the wealth management company by bringing more capital into the wealth management company. And, you've seen, free trade accounts where they don't make charges for trading. They're adjusting the margins at which you're buying and selling, which is where they're making the money. So there's no fee specifically, but it's adjusting your return. Now, I know that any single person is not going to want to become an active investor and suddenly become a full-time investor reading all of these, articles in newspapers and underwriting different deals. Most people want to be as passive as possible. And there's a balance between being passive and knowing enough to understand where your money, where your decisions are being intentionally taken, to being active enough to, have oversight and understand what's going on without necessarily having full management. You have a property management company to manage your rentals potentially. That way you're an active investor, but you've got a property management company looking after that. There's a gentleman in Florida. He's got about 40 odd properties in his 60s, should probably be retired by age, but he's the one that's changing toilets and doing repairs on the stuff. I got a couple of properties from him a couple of years ago, but his wife's really frustrated with him being so hands-on. He doesn't need to do those things. So there's a balance of being maybe a little over in control of what goes on and understanding what's going on and being, doing your checklist once every quarter or month, whatever it is that you're comfortable with, to make sure everything's performing correctly, but also allowing the right people to manage your investments that aren't, dinging you for fees and charges, that are minimizing your returns. The other side that you mentioned in the intro is understanding what tax benefits are available to you outside of just a 401k. The tax benefit for you is not paying tax on the way in. The tax benefit for the company that you work for and the government is that you pay tax, or the tax savings for the company on what they contribute. The government gets their tax when you pull it out. If you can convert that to something like a self-directed IRA, that way you can minimize taxes at that point, because the self-directed is more tax beneficial. There are also Roth IRAs that we can do things with as well. And then you look at whole life insurance, which is another kettle of fish completely. All have their place, and you certainly want to know and be educated and understand what the risks and returns of each of those are and how you diversify where your money is. Because if everything's in a 401k or 4 or 5 of those, then are all your eggs in one basket at that point?
I feel like what we're circling here is a phrase and an outcome. The phrase is no more head in the sand. And the outcome is financial literacy. As in, you are, God willing, going to get lovely and old. And your job when you're lovely and old is to be able to live safely and, dare I say it, comfortably with the wealth you've accumulated across your life. And if we're not looking at that in a midlife capacity, there is risk, I think.
Yeah.
What are the risks?
You've identified homelessness, potential bankruptcy, great suffering through illness. If you can't afford, you don't have the means to pay for your care. And that could be getting care, but not the cost of care that you can afford. The cost of care you can afford, not the cost of care that you need. And that could be government provided care through your state. But those are the questions that we need to take. And it also means that your heart-led, I want to leave a legacy by having a house that's paid off, may not be anywhere near what you need. And if you get sick, you might need to sell that house to contribute towards your assisted living care or medical needs. And that doesn't even, impact your family. There's no asset for them to inherit.
I think the goal for most parents is to have some level of intergenerational wealth, because we all know how hard it is to get started when you don't have anything or much. And so it must also feel, for the people who are faced with that choice, there must be a sense of despondency or worry, maybe guilt or shame about not having much to pass down.
Yeah.
I think that's an unintended negative consequence too.
I mean, I look at my life from December 23 to November last year, I shed 70 pounds. Now, if we relate that to finances, I was aware that I was overweight. I took up skydiving. I would have the least, options of gear to buy at that weight. So I wanted to change my life, not just for skydiving, but that was the spark. So from that point, my awareness was, okay, well, I weigh this much. This is my retirement funds awareness. This is how much I physically weigh. Now, what do I need to do to be intentional? And it's not that I shed 70 pounds overnight. It was very much a day-by-day regimen. And I hired Matt Hoodie to take care of me as far as advising my diet. I then later in the year started to do some more running. And I've never run before. I've never had a bear chase me, so there's been no need. So, the cardio commitment that I made to my health then ran into me running. So the analogy here is we need to be aware of what's there or what isn't there. We need to acknowledge that and be at peace with that and use that as the acknowledgement of the opportunity that lays ahead of us, and then take those intentional steps, whether it's a weekly paycheck, a bi-weekly paycheck, a monthly paycheck. And we need to now commit that, yeah, it might be only $120 a week to start with, but if that's all we can do, after 10 months, we've got $1,200, and then we just build that up over time, and then it can make more of a difference. But we can be proud of ourselves for doing. But it's hard in the beginning to be proud of yourself for such a small financial change, but understanding the compounding effect is not just financial, it's also up here habitually through discipline and understanding ourselves, how we work, what are the decisions that we're choosing not to make, which would affect the commitment that we made to be intentional with that $120 a month, for example. And then what can we do with $120 a month? The initial might be debt consolidation or debt management. So we pay down, I'm not a big Dave fan, but for some people, that is the right answer, to go and pay off all your credit cards and get those done. They're at horrible interest rates whenever you have them. And that's one of the things that's going to hold you back most. So eliminating some of that debt is going to probably be a good thing. To then, whether that's just the savings, because once one or two of those cards are out of the way, now we're in the habit of living without the amount of money that we now started paying off the credit cards with. We're lowering the impact of compound interest to us, and we're getting towards a place where we can benefit from the compound interest for us. I think it was Einstein that said compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. If you understand it, you earn it. If you don't understand it, you pay it.
Hey there, Meg Tuohey here with a quick and exciting announcement. As a psychologist, coach, and founder of the Wisdom Lab, I've had the privilege of helping thousands of individuals break free from the vicious cycles holding them back and tap into their infinite inner wisdom. If you're tired of feeling unheard, unseen, and stuck in the same old struggles, the Wisdom Lab is the breakthrough you've been yearning for. This on-demand program guides you through a powerful process to shatter emotional barriers, overcome deep-rooted blocks, and experience the profound transformation you deserve. In just 4 hours, you'll gain the tools and insights to revolutionize your life from the inside out. Want to learn more? Click or tap the link in the show notes for all the details. Okay, now back to the episode. I mean, that's pretty profound. Let us say that again. If you understand it, you earn it. If you don't understand it, you pay it.
Yeah.
And that means one person's going this way and the other person's going the other way.
Yeah.
That's really something. So talk to us about our heads are out of the sand. We're sitting up, we're paying attention, we're midlife people, and we are ready to start to do something different. So we've done our $120 a month or week, and we've got ourselves to the space where perhaps we paid down some of that debt. Perhaps we've started to feel proud of ourselves and we've recognized that small things often make big changes. Now our debt is somewhat consolidated. The 401k strategy is not it, is what I'm hearing. Or if it is, it's one part of it and we need to diversify. Yep. What other places, what do we do here?
So we need to determine how far that delta is between today and retirement. When we retire, what is it that we want to do in life? Is it the fact that we want to continue everything that we're doing today, including working? In which case we've got to account that 40 hours in the week at least are going to be earning money in addition to what we have coming out of retirement. But we also have to understand if we stop working, then we've got another 40 hours a week to fill. Now, what are we filling that with? Is that spending money, not being in the office? Now we're going out places. How is our life going to change? What do we want to accomplish in life? And how many of those things down the road are, well, one day I'm going to jump out of an airplane. One day I'm going to go on a cruise. One day I'm going to, but what can we do in life while we're making these decisions and building our discipline to enjoy the essence of what that is that we want to do in retirement? So we start doing some of that now. And it's not that I want to use up that, that $120 we talked about in doing things down the road. But time is the thing that is the only finite resource that we have. We can always make more money. We could have a lottery win. I wouldn't bank on it, but we could have a lottery win. But what if we look at time as that lottery win? We have all of the time right now, here and now, to do what we want. Now, we can divide that in time blocking or however we want to do it for work and pleasure. Now, what are the things that really move things forward? There are people that go to the bar every Friday night, do the same thing, eat the same thing habitually. Not to say that's the bad or wrong thing to do. I can guarantee they're not building their retirement like we're talking about. So where other places in life are we doing things we feel guilted or obligated to do? That, I'm so proud of a couple of friends of mine that they weren't the bar people, but they're very well integrated into the community. People would invite them to go places. They work with Dave Ramsey's program, and they would say to people, hey, we're cutting back on expenses right now. We're not doing these activities for now, or we're going to do it once a month. So catch up with us next month and we'll come along. But I tell you, how many of those responses came back with, I'm so glad you said that. I'm going to do the same for a different reason. But because we're not talking about that, there's a pride that we just do what everyone else is doing, but we don't help each other in that, we're one thing expressing ourselves in infinite ways. They just impacted another expression of themselves and inspired them. Maybe it was once, maybe it was multiple times, maybe it was ripples they will never see, because that's the thing that we impact other people with, is the ripples that go way beyond our view. It's like a podcast. One thing you might say, that could be the thing that changes somebody's life forever. Hopefully multiple people's lives. I don't say these things expecting one person's life to change, but if it changes one, it was worth it.
It absolutely was worth it. I want to piggyback off the two words you used. I think it was obligation and guilt. In my work, we talk about boundaries, because essentially that's a boundary. You're saying, don't collapse your boundaries because of obligation or guilt. And when your friends said, no, we're only going to come once a month, they upheld their boundaries, so their values matched their actions.
Yeah.
There's a third thing we say that you never, ever should collapse your boundaries for. So if you're going to collapse your boundaries, don't collapse them because of obligation or guilt, and don't collapse them because of fear. Fear, obligation, guilt. Those are not reasons to drop your boundaries. You can choose to change your boundaries at any time, but when we change them because of fear, obligation, or guilt, it does not lead to good outcomes.
Because it's through scarcity.
Yeah. And so what happens then is it overrides our value system. We do things that are not coherent with who we really are, and then we have a negative reaction. And then oftentimes we'll blame the person or the system because we collapsed our own boundaries. And so in the recognition and then the upholding of their boundaries, they allowed others to mirror that behavior. And that changes the system.
It does.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got some money. We've got some clarity about how we want to spend it. We're midlife. We've got 10, 20, 30 years of working. We're going to choose our runway and we're going to do some financial modeling. We've got a bit of a runway. How do we invest our money so it makes money? How do we not lose the compounding interest? How do we become people that gather the compounding interest?
Sure. So for this, let's talk about the Rockefellers briefly. So the Rockefellers use infinite banking or whole life insurance to be able to build legacy wealth, generational wealth through their family. And the term infinite banking refers to a private banking system. It's using roughly what the banks do to put money into a whole life insurance policy that's structured in a way that you can use paid up additions, which take it beyond the value of the death benefit. And although there's a death benefit, it's more for using the living benefits of the policy, because we can put money into the policy to build its value, its cash value. And we can then borrow a collateralized loan. So we don't take money out like we would from Chase. So you put $100,000 in Chase, you take 50 grand out, they're only paying you interest on 50 grand. Now, with whole life, if you had $100,000 in your whole life policy, they will continue to give you a return on your money, which is somewhere between 5 and 8%, depending on how the investments of the whole life company are going. Try and find a mutually owned company because they are mutually owned by the members, and they will give you more value in your investment, more return, because it's for the members, not a private company. And you can get to a point where, say your daughter wants to buy a car, needs 15 grand to go and buy a car. Instead of going and paying Ford Finance or whoever the corner shop that sells cars are, 15, 18% interest, why don't you take a collateralized loan against you 100,000? They can then borrow from you. They can pay you back at whatever the interest rate you agree with your daughter is. You can charge them the same interest rate if you want to, but that goes back into your policy at the 5.5% interest rate that the life insurance company is charging you to borrow their money with yours as the collateral for the loan. And you can make the difference from your daughter and maybe put that into a savings fund for them. Or even if you haven't got a life insurance policy for them, you could then maybe start a life insurance policy for them, so the rest of that interest might be going in, or you just charge them the 6.5%, and that just covers the payment towards the loan, which you don't have to pay back. Let me let you know, because it's your money. With the life insurance collateralized loans, you don't have to tell them what's the loan's for. You don't have to negotiate or make an application for the loan. You just call them and tell you want the amount that you want. You don't ever have to pay it back. They just reduce that from the cash value or the death benefit. And, that is so simple. Now, the way the Rockefellers do it is with trusts, so that the money just remains in one trust, or it's the beneficiary is the trust. And the way they've structured it is it just goes on and on and on and builds wealth. And we can do that same thing for our families. Instead of having death benefit payout to an individual, what you could do is to have that pay into a trust that you set up, so that then now starts more life policies. So whenever any baby is born, I think it's at 4 or 6 days old, the insurance company sees them as a viable life form. So then now they'll insure that child because it's a low risk, assuming there's no major complications of the birth. You can insure that child, and imagine you've got an extra 20 years of compounding on a child's life policy, which they're never going to see the money from, but the trust that uses it can. So if you're 65 years old, smoker, drinker, you're not a great risk for the insurance company. But if you've got a 4-month-old grandchild or 17-year-old child, you can open a policy on their life which benefits you in the unlikely event of their passing. But you've just created another financial vehicle. And if you set the trust up in a certain way, you can use capital that's within the trust to open up more policies for more people as they're born. And it just pays back into the system and just grows much more quickly.
I'm going to do my favorite thing. It's called Yeah But. Yeah, but Trystan, you don't understand. I don't have any young babies in my family system. Yeah, but Trystan, I don't know how to set up a trust. Yeah, but Trystan, that feels really complicated and overwhelming to me. Yeah, but Trystan, my babies are 35. What do you say to the yeah buts?
I think that's great. It comes back to the beginning where I talked about collaboration and contribution by others. Now, you may know somebody that can contribute to you with time, which they're willing to share with you. That could be somebody that you pay to bring their expertise to you, a consultant, somebody to consult with you. And they can actually talk you through and educate you on the certain areas, get to understand your particular situation. We might find that you've got a niece, but not a daughter or a granddaughter that's at a certain age you could insure. But if you have a niece below the age of 17, somebody that's blood related to you, obviously there are certain criteria that need to be met. But in those situations, that's where contribution from a consultant or a collaborator can then help you through those situations.
Yeah, but Tristan, isn't that just doing the thing you told me not to do at the beginning? Isn't that then paying someone that's actually going to take even more of my money that I'm now kind of worried about because I already know now I don't have enough? And now you want me to pay someone? But what if they're not going to actually help me the way that someone like you would?
Mm.
I feel like I'm going to cross my arms. I'm channeling the
Yeah.
yeah buts.
Yeah. And I love it. Just understand what it is that those people are doing. Talk to several people so you get an understanding of using this to guide you.
Your heart.
Is somebody working for a big corporation? Are they living and breathing what they're sharing with you? Or are they just selling something because they make good commission off it? And from experience working at the store called Fry's Electronics, I just did a second job in the evenings to put my kid through private preschool.
Mm.
And the difference in experience working for them and another big box retailer that were not commission based, I much more appreciated working for the non-commission based company because I could, I felt comfortable telling the truth. Where in the situation of the commission, I knew I was going to make so much money telling the truth, but I always did it. I had the fewest returns because people bought for the reason that I shared with them that suited them or it didn't suit them. But I know other people made a lot more money, but their paychecks were, docked every 2 or 3 weeks because people were bringing products back because it wasn't the product they really needed.
Okay. So your advice is to investigate, use your beautiful brain, use your heart to choose someone, look at where their source of income is coming from. Is that really enough to choose someone that's going to steer me in the right direction? It feels like a pivotal, important moment that I'm in.
It is a very important one.
So is that actually the only grounds or competencies I need to be thinking about? Or are there other things I need to be thinking about here as I try to find the person to help me?
Community is so important. Surrounding yourself with people, and I just did a TED style talk in November about this. I said your circle of influence will make or break you. The people you spend most time with are going to influence who you become. If you're hanging around with 5 drinkers, you're going to become a drinker. If you're hanging around with 5 millionaires, you're probably going to have a much better chance of becoming a millionaire or somebody that's on the right financial future. Now, you look on driveways, you see boats, RVs, all these different things. It's not for us to judge whether people should or shouldn't have these things, but is that something that's helping their financial future or hindering it? And we'll never know until down the road, but once we get to know people, we have transparent conversations with people. And it's not to say we should share deep personal, areas with everybody that we come across, but having that community around you and having an idea of, is this where I'm trying to go? Getting to know the people for who they are and understanding what do they talk about? Are they talking about, does it sound like they're just blowing money everywhere and there's no sort of holding back? Are they crazy for a good time, but not crazy for setting up a solid future? You'd meet Warren Buffett down at, his favorite little breakfast place. He's probably not the person that you'd probably take financial advice from, driving his original Honda, whatever it was from 25 years ago, living in the same house that he bought when he wasn't a multi-billionaire. That's why we need to talk to people. And it comes back to a point, it's often the person that you don't expect that may be able to help you or you may be able to help them. We do so much judging on people on what we see, not engaging with them deeply. There's so much superficiality around in this day and age.
There's like an openness. You need an openness, and I guess that matches the taking the head out of the sand and starting to be present, to look for like-minded people or people further ahead, and starting to build a network of people that allows you to learn and grow and be responsible for your financial future.
And it comes with being at peace where we are. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't like it to change.
Yeah.
But whilst we're in that scarce mindset of fear, we're also going to grab at get-rich-quick schemes and follow the wrong path. And we'll follow people that are walking the walk, but not necessarily talking the talk.
Yeah.
Or talking the talk and not walking the walk, one of the two. And that's where us being at peace with where we are, we can then step into the future with more clarity rather than that, towards abundance instead of, attracting more scarcity and fear.
Okay, so I've taken your advice and I've met some new people, and they seem like they're financially literate, they're ahead of me, and they're starting to share their ideas. I've shared a little bit about my financial literacy or my financial kind of position, and they're starting to offer me advice and suggestions. How do I discern whether actually they're good decisions or not? How do I really tell that I'm not getting a steer in the direction that's not serving me?
That's a very, very difficult question to answer, and I don't think there is one answer for that question. Do we feel peace through that connection? Do we feel authenticity? And there are a lot of very convincing people.
Yeah.
But how often do we listen to ourselves for our truth?
Mm.
We're so busy attending to other things and ignoring ourselves to chase things that aren't important. And again, coming back to that here and now. And it's not just 5 minutes sitting down, but it's consistently sitting down with yourself, maybe meditating. And it's not to say you have to meditate to do this, but to really be in close contact with yourself and what your inner peace is telling you. And sometimes that will maybe mislead you because, that butterflies feeling. Is that fear?
Yeah.
Or is it excitement?
Is it I'm in the right place, or is it pay attention? Yeah.
Yeah.
I did wonder whether there's, how if we have a medical problem, we go and see a specialist, we're often likely to see a second opinion or even a third opinion.
Absolutely.
Is that the same advice you might bring to financial
Very much
matters?
so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe the trick is to see quite different financial perspectives. So if we're looking at the idea of life insurance and we're looking at the idea of portfolio or real estate investments or self-managed funds, we might try and talk to a few different people in those categories so that we can have the experience of discerning what the right thing is.
Because in most cases, whatever it is we're going to invest in is probably going to be a minimum of 3 to 5 years.
Right.
Depending on what that asset class is. And I think we need to, Dan Fleischman talks about the 20-40-40 rule. That to invest 40% of what you have into something that's low risk and low return, 40% that's medium risk, medium return, and 20% which is high risk, high return. That could be venture capitalism, that could be cryptocurrency, that sort of thing. So knowing that if you can't afford to lose this thing, maybe focus on those two first, but maybe put something into a higher risk thing. But why are we investing? And that's why it comes back to the question, where do you want to be? What is your lifestyle going to be? And how long is it realistically going to take to project to get some of those things? Because if we use the most conservative projections to get to the intended retirement age, anything better is going to bring that age forward or make a more abundant retirement at the age that we planned. And if we do things right, we may be able to transition slowly away from employment. And whether we're putting money solely into, maybe we buy assets with a self-directed IRA, which we can't access that money until we get to retirement age. That's great for the retirement end of things. But there might be some things that we can implement through some asset protection, having an LLC that we invest in maybe with the whole life money so that we can start affecting income now. And I wouldn't suggest we necessarily use that income other than to snowball into more now investments. So our midterm towards retirement, which is getting closer to retirement, gives us more options to whether we put more into retirement or whether we slow down working a little bit if things are going well. So then we can focus on more midterm returns so that lowers the amount of work that we need to do when we get to that point. Maybe we can start doing things more that we're more passionate about, that are maybe we do 30 hours a week working instead of 40. Now we can maybe gift some time, but that could also be seen as a tax deduction as well if we look at it in the right way, because we're giving value. If we have a company that we then consult from, that company could be giving time to a charity that we can then get a tax benefit from for the company that may flow through to us in some way, shape, or form towards our active income.
Mm.
So we're giving something from the heart that we love to do. Maybe it's helping mental health, teens, that sort of thing.
Mm.
Whatever that looks like, there are other ways that we can, benefit ourselves. And that gives us that feel-good feeling as well as being able to contribute.
I like the 40-40-20 as a rule of thumb. I like the safety of that. And also, I don't know if you know this, but Dan has been a guest on this podcast. So there's an episode that you can scroll back, listeners, if you want to hear it. He's a beautiful person.
He's incredible, yeah.
He's a beautiful person to interview and to be with in person. He's gorgeous. I did want to say to you, though, that there is quite an invitation here. And I think the invitation is you're midlife, and there is a responsibility that I think Trystan and I are inviting you to partner with yourself on, which is your own financial literacy and your own financial decisions belong to you. And what you do right now really matters. It matters. It matters for your future self. And it might feel like, I don't want to do it right now. Oh, yeah, but I've got a lot on. Yeah, but I've got to get the kids and I've got to do the thing. And I'm right in the crunch of that midlife time. I can't have the capacity to run some spreadsheets. I don't really like spreadsheets. I don't really want to know. I just want to set and forget. I think if you take anything from this conversation, it is that is a great risk for your future self. A great risk.
Yeah.
Now, would you agree?
I do. And, ahead of my book coming out, which isn't yet completed, but there's a great book called Cash Flow Breakfast Club. It was written by a gentleman's name I forget now, but it talks about a realtor in Hawaii and his sister. His sister is a school teacher, very low wages, very low income. He was a realtor in the first couple of chapters. He's getting either evicted or his lease is up because he can't afford to pay the lease on this fancy apartment building that he's living in. And his sister is offering him one of the 2 units in a duplex that she owns. Now, through the book, he gets frustrated that, well, why is she getting financial coaching from somebody else? He's the realtor in the family. He's the expert in real estate. And then he realizes it's a guy that he sat down with once and didn't go back for a second appointment with at one of the earlier brokerages that he was bobbing around between. And she was the one that managed to set herself financially free within 5 years, whilst being a teacher, living off, very low wages, but still managing to save enough to invest in one, then a second, and then multiple properties in, I think it was like Virginia or DC or somewhere, which is a different market away from Hawaii, but it was much more of a linear market than Arizona and Vegas, California. They're much more cyclical. They're much more volatile market prices in the swings. Whereas some of these other markets are much more consistent long-term. You may only make $10,000 in equity over 5 or 10 years, but the cost of the property is a lot lower. So you can buy more properties and the rent is still, proportionally higher per square foot. So your profit margin is actually higher. And she was able to snowball those things and create financial freedom within 5 years. And it's a great book to read, to get in. And there are cash flow breakfast clubs around the country that are running. One of the things that I do with a friend of mine, Catherine Bell, we set up a game night for cash flow, Robert's game Cash Flow. And we just sit down with people that are interested in investing, not playing Monopoly, which is one way of doing things. But Robert's game is really smart because it shows you through other people watching, and what you end up with is how you think about money and how you relate to it in the game style itself is a ring, which is the rat race, where you're trading your time for money, and then you try and build up cash flowing assets or income so you can get out of the rat race and then you can go for your dreams. And this is a really important way of learning with some other people that know how the game works, that relate to money in a different way. And this can also be a light bulb moment for a lot of people that, I keep buying these doodads, which they call them, like liabilities, like whether it's a boat or an RV or something that really doesn't help you move forward. But once you get out the rat race and you've got your passive income covering your income, you can buy more assets to pay for more liabilities. And that's where we don't take notice of buying the coffee every couple of days or every morning. It's not just the $5 you spend, which adds up to $20 a week or $25 a week. What could that $25 have done if it was invested well? And what could that have returned you over a 5 or a 10 or 30-year period? And I think I looked at it, and I'm not sure the exact numbers that came out. I looked at a compounding sheet. So we looked at putting maybe $200 in to begin with, another $200 a month for 20 or 30 years. And it was $100,000 or something. That was the opportunity cost of buying that coffee every day.
Yeah, it is the idea of small things often. They add up to big things. Yeah. So that small thing makes sense to me, that if you were to forego coffee 3 days a week and have it 2 days, that 3 days a week of $5 a coffee still adds up to 2/3 of that total
Or there's a
sum.
coffee machine at home that you spend 5 minutes faffing around with and froth yourself a coffee before you go out the door, and you still get your coffee, but it's a much more, strategic way of doing things.
Well, I feel like we're coming to the end. I feel like we've come full circle. It's been quite a journey. I feel revved up. I feel focused. And I feel like there is opportunity and that the time for action is now. And so let us, now that we've all kind of connected, we're in a space where we belong together, let's take this outside metaphorically. Let's gather our blankets and a cup of tea that we made ourselves to save the $5. And we'll sit around this patio and we might put some heat lamps on. And there's a couple of listeners here and everybody's connected and belonging. And they're leaning forward because it feels like there's one last piece of wisdom or advice that you have for us. And before we call it for the night and head upstairs to bed, where we're going to dream and reflect and maybe make some decisions and set some goals and start to really deep dive into our own financials, what is the thing that we are going to end our night talking about?
I think in that process, the wants versus needs is a very important conversation. What do we need to exist? Obviously, food and water and nutrition. There are some things in our life we need transport. We need certain other things. What are the things that we want that we don't need right now we can put off, which is going to change our financial and, our experience of life in the future by doing these small things. And there could be a lot of things. I was just mentioning when I arrived that going through my brother's attic, a couple of boxes, that there's things there that we don't look at every day. They're nice to have. But is there a way that we can have the memory of those things, like scanning those old photographs in? I don't know more than half the people in the photographs. What else are we metaphorically or physically carrying around with us in our house? I've noticed Americans are buying a lot of self-storage rentals here. There's a lot of investors buying into self-storage. How much of that stuff is really ever going to be used again?
And how much of it is of actual value?
And why are we paying $150, $200 a month to store something that's going to be worth negative value because we spent that money on that time? That's almost the opportunity cost, isn't it? Right in that metaphor. So how can we look at our life? And, a friend of mine took us through a hike in Sedona about 2 years ago. On the way through the woods, he said, pick up a rock. Choose a nice looking stone and take it with you. And then we carried it with us and got back to the start, and he had us put it down. He said, how much do you carry with you that somebody else asks you to carry on their behalf? And you don't even question why? And how much do we carry for ourselves that we don't need to be carrying with us through life? And how much does that change what we do? Because we're doing something we think somebody else wants us to do. And I'll swing this round to a conversation I had with my daughter 3 weeks ago. And this comes down to the story we have in our mind and the story somebody else has about the same situation. It can be polar opposite. I love traveling. I love taking my kids to Europe. I took them to Italy, to Milan and Venice on one trip. several times to the UK and different places around the US. And I had this guilt that I hadn't taken them enough. I hadn't taken them to enough places. And she said to me, Dad, but you took us loads of places. We went places all of the time. So my story in my mind is one thing. Her story was completely opposite about that topic. And it gave me, time to think about where in other places in life have I got a story about my finances, or in this situation, or other things that I should be doing something or I haven't done enough. Well, it doesn't matter what we think. What does that 401k say? Or what does our retirement look like projected? That's the only thing that counts. And we can't guarantee that 6 months before we retire, it's happened to thousands of people, that the market tanks.
Yeah.
And if that's our one basket of eggs and it just fell on the floor, that's where we need to look introspectively.
I think so too. One of the things that I was thinking as you were so eloquently talking about that is that we need to make sure we have diversified assets. We need to be on top of our game and be thinking about the future, thoughtful about the future, because time passes. Whether we are going to look at this topic of money or not, the time is going to pass, and we will, God willing, get nice and old. And so how do we allow ourselves to be responsible and accountable and show up for ourselves in this very important piece of the puzzle? And then the other thing around our stories that we tell ourselves, really what matters is, am I proud of how I've managed my money? Am I proud of how I've set myself up for this end chapter of my life, because there's no one coming to save me? And am I proud with how I'm exiting this life, because the children that I have, or the loved ones that are around me as I exit this life, they are learning from me. And so if I bring financial literacy, then they get to see that and start to build their own experience of that.
Yeah.
So my decisions actually impact and ripple through everyone I love on every single level.
Absolutely. Yeah. My eldest she took on a lease on an apartment with a couple of friends in October.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to help her get an FHA loan before she renews, to go and buy a quadplex.
Okay.
So how familiar are you with FHA? So FHA allows you to buy up to a 4-unit residential multifamily apartment building with an owner-occupied FHA loan. So you got a smaller interest rate and only a 3.5% down payment. So it's her getting on the property ladder. Within 6 months or a year, she can then maybe consider going and buying another property and keeping that one as a rental, where all 4 units are. And then my second daughter, I'll help her in a couple of years do the same. So these are the things that we can impact with our kids. So many people don't talk about money. It's taboo.
It's taboo. And then what we have is our parents and our grandparents, if we can see them, and how they retired, how they lived, and how they decided. And sometimes those ways that they've retired or used their money are actually not what we want to emulate. And so I want our listeners to be thoughtful about what they choose, because you can choose to emulate the people around you. And is that the quality of life that you want?
Yeah.
Or if you want it to be something different, then the invitation is to find different thought leaders or mentors that are going to model what else is possible. And that feels like it's an important conversation.
And connection and community, that can be talking to people in their retirement now, the people that do look like they're doing well in retirement, saying, hey, I've got 3 kids. I'm raising them to blah, blah, blah. I'm in this position in life. I mean, obviously get to know these people a little bit, but be pretty straight with them, and they'll probably be pretty straight with you. The older we get, the less we're willing to tolerate people that are not in alignment with what we're doing. But we find that, the elder generation is happier to be of service by sharing that. They're quite opinionated quite often. I mean, you met the gentleman we spoke of earlier.
Robert.
So, the more clear they can be and willing to be about these things. They might not spend 2 hours breaking down everything for you, But if they can give you a little jewel of knowledge or a contact who they work with or what approach they took, that can be very helpful too.
Yeah. And you don't have to follow them hook, line, and sinker. You can take a piece of the data, take a piece of the wisdom, and then move forward in a way that suits you.
Yeah.
You don't have to pick something up completely and absorb it. You get to decide what works for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It has been such a joy to talk with you, Trystan. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Meg. It's been amazing. Thank you.
It's been super fun, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. I'd like to thank Trystan Trenberth for joining me today on Wisdom Stripes. In today's episode, we explored his journey from real estate investor to financial strategist, the lessons he's learned along the way, and how he's using his platform to help others create financial freedom. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an update. You can follow Trystan by searching at Trystan Trenberth and visiting investwithtristan.com. To stay connected with me, follow at Meg Tuohey Official on Instagram. Thank you for listening to another episode of Wisdom Stripes. I hope you gained a little wisdom today. My name is Meg Tuohey, and this is Wisdom Stripes. Thank you for listening to this episode of Wisdom Stripes. Follow me on at Meg Tuohey Official and leave a comment and review. I'm looking forward to meeting you here next time on Wisdom Stripes.